Now that the conventional acrylic is completely dry, I've got a nice waterproof layer here, and I'm going to start painting over the top of that with some Atelier interactive acrylic. Now these acrylics are applied in the same way as conventional acrylic, but the difference is once they've dried you can reactivate the paint by simply spraying the picture with water. And that means you can blend these acrylics far more easily and without worrying about the quick drying times. I'm actually applying some phthalo or phthalo blue on top of my undercoat here, and I really love this blue because it is it's a little bit translucent straight out of the tube. So we've added a little bit of phthalo blue or phthalo blue here. Not quite sure how to pronounce that. I've heard both pronunciations. In a previous life I used to work with a dye when I was doing some research work called phthalocyanine. So in my head at least I think of this as phthalo blue. But you'll know what I mean no matter which way I say it. Okay, so as that's drying you can probably just about see that we're getting some of the underlayer colour showing through there, which is exactly what I wanted. I'm going to put some down on the lower rear leg here. And a little touch here to the right of the tail. And a touch on this shadow showing the curve of the hind quarters. Now I'm going to get some yellow ochre and I'm going to blend that in certain areas here, and probably some burnt umber as well to make this a little bit more coppery in colour. But before I do that, on second thoughts, I'm going to add a little more of the blue onto the tail. Like this, and I'm keeping the brush strokes going in the direction with which, in the same direction as the hair of the tail falls. And I'm going to extend the tail, start to paint in the end of the tail here. You see where that blue's going on because it's translucent, it's looking like just a darker green. But I can deal with that later. Let's get a little more. Okay, yes, I'm liking the way that's looking. I'm going to take back what I said about the yellow ochre and the burnt umber, and before I do that I'm going to put in some highlights in this blue area here. So I've got just an ordinary water bottle to spray the paint. Just going to give that a light spray, and that may run a bit, now, so you want to have your paper towels handy so things don't get too out of order. And now I'm adding just a touch of titanium white to the blue that we had. So let's start applying some highlights here on the tail. And because I'm painting into wet paint, this is effectively, you can effectively get the same blending effects that you would get if you were painting using the wet in wet technique with oil paints. But of course you don't have to worry about the solvents, because the acrylic paint, as you know, you simply dilute with water. So by adding the titanium white to the blue, we get this really vibrant blue highlight colour, which really pops against the orange that we've used on the other parts of the horse. And so in fact I'm going to continue some of that highlight colour as I've got it on the brush onto the mane. So the light's catching there on the top of the mane and round here. And I'm going to use a little bit of that there on the nose. And I'm going to add just a touch more titanium white to that mix. So while the paint is still damp, I'm just going to add some slightly lighter highlights along that part of the mane as well. And we'll maybe put just a touch here and along here as well. So when you look at highlights on objects, what you'll often find is there's sort of a generally highlighted region, and then within that highlight region there's an even brighter highlight taking up less space. Okay, now I'm going to go on to the yellow ochre and the burnt umber with maybe a touch of cadmium yellow as well. One of the most enjoyable parts of painting is the slightly unpredictable nature of the effects you'll get if you're just a little bit open-minded and willing to try something that you perhaps haven't tried before. So I'm getting kind of a green hue there, which I don't want a lot of in quantity, which I don't want a lot of on the hindquarters, but there's a little bit of a green highlight on the side of the horse here. And so as I've happened upon that green shade, I'm going to use that right here on the side of the horse. And I've now noticed that in addition to that, I need to make this left edge of the hindquarters come out more to the left. So I'm going to correct that a bit later. We'll also put a bit of that green down here on the rear leg. And just a touch here as well. So you can see I'm painting a little bit slower now than I did at the early stages of the painting. And I'm trying to get things gradually more and more accurate as we move ahead. So a little more titanium white into the mix now. And we'll just pop that in here where the light is catching the top of that right leg. That leg is mostly hidden by this bushy tail we've got going on here. And I think I actually need to knock that back a little bit too much white there. So back to the yellow ochre. Bring some of that in at the top, and that's still too light. So a little cadmium red, and a little burnt umber, and we'll blend that in. Yeah, okay, that's not too bad. That's not too bad. Little touch of pure red coming off the brush there, but I quite like that, so I'm going to leave that for the moment. And as I've mixed this colour, this sort of darker reddy brown, I'm going to pop some of that in here on the left side. And as I mentioned a moment ago, I'm actually going to fill that little bit in there to extend the left edge of the hindquarters, but I'm going to go over that in a moment with a dark blue. So now as I've got this nice brown red on my brush, I'm going to use it where appropriate on other parts of the animal. So as I paint along, it's always, no, obviously it's a work in progress, but my approach to the painting is also very flexible. It's planned to an extent in that I have techniques that I use repeatedly, but I always try to be open-minded with each painting, and that way you come across new techniques, you come across more efficient ways of doing things you've done for a long time, and you know that's part of the fun, really, for me, is that it's always a fresh experience if you stay open-minded.